Welcome, everybody. So our first presentation today is going to be Taylor from Galvia Digital, who's going to be talking about the workflow builder. So over to you, Taylor.
Yep. So hello, everyone. Hope you're all having an amazing day. Today, I'm just going to be giving an overview of the time that was spent in Los Angeles at the developer meetup. Specifically, I'm going to be diving into the workflow builder feature I've been working on and give a presentation about in LA. I'm going to start off with just some updates that the workflow builder has had. And then I'm planning on moving into a live demo if all goes well, fingers crossed. Then after that, I'll be finishing up with some takeaways from LA, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But of course, I'm joking, the entire trip was amazing. It was a great learning experience. So to follow up on my presentation, I haven't had much opportunity to add new functionality to the workflow builder, but I have made some much needed performance improvements. The builder is fully working and in a state that I could get it to users. There is just a couple features that would sort of help to round out the functionality, such as being able to delete a workflow. I have got it wrote down in my diary to create the PR for this next week, and I'll be targeting the 7.6 release of Arches, since it has been over a month, but please forgive me from the developers conference. There was one point Cyrus made, which admittedly I wasn't aware of, that the workflows can be dynamic. And this was the reason they kept the JSON structure inside the JS file so that they could dynamically switch out the steps when they needed. Where the workflow builder has taken a different approach and allows you to create more linear workflows that can't really have interchangeable steps because of where the logic or where the JSON structure of the workflow has been stored, which is now in the plugin file. So currently, if you wanted to, you could use the builder as a workflow template generator. I never actually show the workflow it produces on like the sidebar or in the inlet workflow page, and just take the JSON export into your JS file, which is a massive speed up in time. If you're familiar with like trying to gather all the hidden nodes and all the different UUIDs, it definitely is a massive help. So I'm just going to move on to a demo now. So if you've got any questions in between this, just shout them out, let me know. Can everyone see that okay? Yep, good stuff.
Yep.
So currently we're looking at our instance of Arches, which we're building for HED, which is the Historic Environment Division in Northern Ireland. We're going to take a look at the builder. Just going to go back a page. So from this page, you'll see existing workflows that have been built with the builder. So you can go back in and edit them or make changes as you want. Currently, I've got one here as an example. It takes a wee second to load because we've got some permission stuff there. But at the minute, it's just checking I have access to every single resource model, and then it brings them all back. So if you wanted to start a new one, you would select from one of the resource models as the base. I do have plans to possibly allow for multiple models in the same workflow, but I just haven't got to that yet. So I'll show you what a workflow would look like that has already been built up. I'll start from the workflow config page. So you can see we've got the name of the workflow, if we should generate the workflow slug, if the workflow should appear in the sidebar, and then we've got some additional configuration for the init workflow page, and we can actually toggle whether or not this workflow should appear on that page, as well as the name that should be on there, the description, the background colors, and the icons. We can then move on and we can see what some of the steps look like. We've got the configuration for it here, where we can change the information box data. Is the step required? So the user has to provide some form of data, the title, and then also the slug for the step. And we've been following a pattern where we tend to use the system reference numbers as the very first step, so we can get the resource ID and then use that for the further component lookups. We can just see some of the more filled out pages here. Then if we wanted to, we could see what this workflow actually looks like in its generated form. And this is new functionality we have where we can actually reopen workflows or decide to start new one, but we currently don't have any archive sources created, so it's going to start new. And you can see there's the first step where we create our system reference, and then we can see the generated output of the workflow builder. If we wanted to come back, we could then check that matches up, so we can see we've got our subtitles and a slight appearance of what that would look like, and then the final rendered output here. So I also wanted to show you building a workflow from the start, and then talk about some of the parent tile changes and how they've sort of been made easier to implement things like the location details, or location data, I think, sorry. Because that is a parent tile. So to be able to utilize parent tiles in a workflow, we first need to have the parent tile ID, so we can then link to it and then also populate the cards in there. So I'm going to start with an activity, and we're just going to give it a name of create activity. Going to let it auto-generate the slug for us. I'm also going to create a workflow config, which if we come back here, we should see that we don't have any create activity on this page yet. Call this workflow to create an activity. And then just for the sake of testing, we'll give it some wacky colors. And we'll give it a wee flag. So from this point, I just need to toggle this. I can publish this, and I can export it to see what the JSON structure of that would look like currently. So typically, the workflows that we used to have would only contain a show, but I've extended them to also include the graph ID that we're working with, the step config, which will populate shortly, and then the init workflow config gets stored on the plugin as well, so that that can then be interchanged in and out of the init workflow page. And if we came back to the workflow page, we should be able to refresh and see we've got our very abstract create activity. So we can then move on to creating a step. We'll say start activity. We'll let that generate the slug for us. We'll say this is required, and we'll enter something like please provide a name. And we can then use this plus button down the bottom to create a new card. And from here, we can then select through the node groups that are available on the activity model. We will select the activity names. Because this is our first step, this is going to be the step that's creating our resource ID. So we don't need to select the resource ID path for this. I will just toggle these off, and this sort of starts a reloading state. Because this was a performance problem where you clicked multiple of the hidden nodes at the same time. It was actually sending off a request for each individual one. So there's now a bit of a pushback on that until you've stopped interacting with it before it reloads. And if we update this and we export this, we can see we've now got some information in our step config. Explicitly this first step, the title, the required state, and then the configuration for this. We will see a slight change in this in a second when I decide to utilize the addresses. So we will say this needs to be an address step. We will then create another card, select the address node group, and you can see this is loaded correctly. And then we'll select our resource ID path to use the very first step that we created, and we've got the step name and then the card name of that step and the order. So you can sort of use that to work out what one you're trying to select. If we export this now, we can see that our first step has now been appended with required parent tiles, and it's been given a lookup name and a parent node group ID. The parent node group ID is to identify the tile it needs to create. And the lookup name is so that we can then look up back to this first card using that key. And if we come down, we'll then see that the parent tile ID has been set to the first step. This is a unique ID that's been generated, but you can see this just matches the first component up here. And then it selects the location data lookup key that we've generated for that. So now that we've got this updated, we come back. If we then select go into our create activity workflow that we've just created, we'll then see we've been met with our first step to create the name. So we'll call this my new activity. And we can see the addresses. Tile is loaded correctly, which has had no setup needed from the parent tile side. We'll just say full address. We'll give it a street name. Called Belfast, Antrim, and BT 36777. If we save that, that's us completed the workflow, so we can exit that now. And if we come back to our search page, I'm sure you're all familiar with workflows, but the functionality completely. This was the archive source I was sort of messing with there in the first step, or the first example. We come in here, we can edit this. And we can see we've got our activity names and our location data parent tile has been populated with addresses correctly. And that's about it for the demo. So I'll just ask quickly, does anyone have any questions based on the demo? All right. Well, I shall stop sharing.
Yeah, just sorry, there is a question. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you for the demo. It looks quite nice. Could you show an example of a single and a multiple entry card? Is it possible to have those on the same page?
It is actually, yes. That's completely slipped my head there, but you can. So I'll just create a new step here on the same activity workflow that we were just modifying there. And we will say, let's see, that's a good one. Suppose we could say, so we've got a council field that we can use, and this is a drop down of just all the different councils in Northern Ireland. I don't think you would usually have more than one of these, but for the sake of the demo, we then can select the tiles managed. So currently it's one, or we can set it to many, and that sort of gives you a rendered example of what that might look like. I have just had a slight realization there that I don't think the council is actually allowed to have more than one entry. So I'll change this to localities. Yes, I'll change it to localities. Because none of the localities is allowed to have many. Didn't seem to pick up on the many that it was registered to, but we can switch that back. And if we hit update then, we come on back to our workflow, head back into the workflow. New activity, and then save that. Move on to the tab 3 then, and we can see that it's being configured with the many tile, and we can add that in. It's created our new localities. We can save that, and if we come on back to here, have a look at the edit page again. We should see that the localities and administrative areas hasn't been configured. That's a new bug.
You should have a new activity you created because you created a new one to test that rather than going into that's your existing one that you did previously. So you need to refresh your search.
Thank you. Keep me on my toes. So yes, we should then see localities and administrative areas. Perfect. I was going to say I didn't touch much logic after that. Like that's just the usual workflow logic. So
yeah. And it would just appear in the same appearance if there was a single node on the same page. as the localities one?
If we like had another tile or a card, sorry.
Yeah. Another with a single.
Yeah. So we can just we can add a new card using the button down the bottom here, and then we can select that to be named locations, and this is still a one tile.
Yep.
So that should load. Yeah. Just going to remove this one, update that, and if we come back to here, we'll just go into the activity workflow again, let it refresh with the new JSON structure. New activity. And then we'll skip on to tab 3 again. Not sure why that hasn't rendered correctly, but I have. I suppose I could show you the archive source workflow actually, or the archive catalog, because it does actually utilize the many tiles as well. And I think if we just change this to maybe put the file ID here and link that back to the system ref, we'll update this. Go back to the workflows page, take a look at archive catalog. If I was to guess what that issue was, it's most likely a problem with the node group. Because yeah, we can see there that the file ID has appeared correctly for this one, and that's a single tile.
Yeah, okay, thank you. This is quite useful. I think this was also a limitation in the grouping card. Like I know workflow is much more, has more to offer than simplifying, but the grouping card did not allow single and multiple cards to be grouped together on one page. So this is quite useful. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your question. Is there any more, or am I okay to move on? Cool. I'll just stop sharing here. So next I just want to cover some of the takeaways from the LA meetup. I'm going to start off with the people. So it was great to see everyone and to get speaking to everyone in person. There's some really lovely people that are actually working on this project. It also brought into scale the community that's actually there, because with most open source projects, you might see a lot of contributors and you'll never actually meet them in person or get speaking to them, or they're sort of just avatars and names on a screen. Whereas we actually got to interact with everyone and see everyone's different features they're working on and how they're sort of looking at expanding on Arches. And it really did just drive the scale of the community, which I very enjoyed. And yeah, then we can move on to some of the software. So like I sort of mentioned earlier, Cyrus had mentioned that there is functionality in the workflow builder that I wasn't fully aware of. I don't think, honestly, I would have got to learn so much about Arches and some of the internal details without actually being there. It was definitely, like, overall, probably one of the best learning experiences I've had in relation to the project. And a lot of them could definitely help solve some of the problems we have with certain parts. So the open workflows, we're having problems with reloading some of the tiles because we can't determine where to put them back. And Galen had suggested that there's actually a property on the tile or on a tile that we can sort of customize, almost like metadata. So we can put our own information into that, and we could utilize that then to provide some sort of ID that directs it back to the correct location in a workflow when we want to reopen that and reload those tiles. So I thought that was very valuable. The breakout session we did, where we went around and sort of voted on different topics where there was more interest in. Everyone sort of broke off into different groups and began working on these different, either doing demos or actually doing some live programming to sort of like work things out. I thought that was very valuable because it was also massive team building as well, because You know, we were working with people we had never worked with before. They're also working on Arches, so there was learning on both sides. We got to teach some stuff and we got to learn some stuff. Very, very valuable overall. And then, of course, the presentations. I couldn't say there was a bad presentation. Everyone gave a very, very impressive presentation, and it was amazing to see some of the new things that were sort of coming in the Arches, like some of the new AI features, and as well as probably one of my favorites would be the graph versioning, which is definitely going to be a big help for us in the future, so that we can maintain a history of graphs and then also keep them changeable dynamically. And then there's also a migration feature coming with that as well, so we can carry on our data from where it was. And then another one would be the standalone view apps, which feels like there's going to be a lot of power there to really take what we've sort of felt a bit more rigid with in Arches, where we sort of have to conform to the UI, whereas now with the standalone view apps, we could definitely drive a lot of new functionality quicker and utilize Arches almost as like a full backend infrastructure rather than a fully integrated dashboard and backend solution, which I think will be very, very useful in the future. And that is about all from me. So if anyone has any more questions, let me know.
No, thank you, Taylor. That was really a very good presentation. Very interesting. As a user, local administrator, I think the ability to build workflows like that would be very useful. We use workflows for our advisors with their planning work, but also I can see this being useful for, we create skeleton records for holding our data reports before we add full report creation. So this would be a good way of ensuring that people putting the information on put on just the information that it is required. So thank you very much again, Taylor. I think we're running a little bit behind, so if you do have any questions, maybe we can save them to the end, or I'm sure Taylor and the other presenters wouldn't mind discussing this over emails later. So that's the first presentation on workflows. Hopefully that's whetted your appetite on what workflows can do. And so next we have Owen, who is going to talk to us about workflows on the go.
Yes, I'll start to share my screen here.
Thank you.
Is it shared yet? We good? Cool.
Yep, all good.
Yeah.
All right. So my name is Owen. I am one of Taylor's colleagues, one of his lovely colleagues working on the thing that he mentioned. We're currently working with Flax and Teal, who is a Belfast-based provider, who've used it in several projects. The one that myself and Taylor are involved with is for Northern Ireland's Department of Communities, in particular the Historic Environment Division. So I'm going to talk about what they do, and one of their needs in particular, which is a portable way of interacting with their Arches implementation. So this intro is going to be almost identical to the one that I did in Los Angeles, but then I have taken some of the technical stuff out and I've replaced that with just a more up-to-date video of where we're at the moment, because if you do go back and watch the one from LA, it was very, very early stages. It was more talking about design principles and things like that that's going to be following. So without further ado, yeah, this is still not completed by any means, but it's a lot further on than it was last month. So I'll show it. So first of all, I will talk about HED. So HED, their job is to find and record heritage assets across Northern Ireland. Once they do that, they can assign legal protections to them. They're also the regulatory body for excavations. So if you're doing an archaeological dig, they'd be who you'd apply to get a license with. And then they would provide advice for businesses, builders, developers, whenever they're planning works near or on heritage assets, basically to ensure that those legal protections are respected, while letting people get on with things where that's possible. And if not, then they flag enforcements. The most important thing about HED for us is that they have began using Arches to keep the records, and us at Flax and Teal, our job has been to help them with this migration. So whenever we look at what they currently do, the HED, the way that they operate is very kind of task oriented. They use a lot of forms. So if they were doing an archaeological investigation, they would complete an archaeological investigation form, and that has all the fields that they would need to do it. A lot of these tasks are, they have legal requirements about what information needs gathered when completing them as well, so we need to respect that. Yeah, so we didn't want to be going into individual resource editors whenever they're carrying out a task and trying to remember which fields they had to fill in, especially if they could potentially be working with multiple different resource models at a time. And we also didn't want to overwhelm them with the amount of options of things to fill in whenever they could, quite easily have quite a small task and only need some fields to complete it. Whereas if you show the entire resource model, there might be things that aren't relevant for them, or things that we would actually actively discourage one team from making changes to. So Arches does have capability for this kind of work, which is the workflows. And that's why our implementation of Arches is very workflow heavy. And that's part of the reason why Taylor has done the work that he has done in making workflows easier to build and use. There's also been some work extending the functionality of workflows that we haven't been talking about today. So yes, we've decided to use workflows, and we're coming along with that. But that has left one big thing, which is site visits. So you can imagine if you're working across rural areas, if you're working with Arches, you're going to have to go to the site. You're going to have to record all your notes. Because we are in the UK and we are not in Los Angeles, it's probably going to be quite wet. Probably going to have soggy bits of paper, things that make recording quite difficult to keep it accurate. And then whenever you get back, you're going to have to duplicate all the work again into typing it into Arches so that it can understand it. So what we're trying to do is to make something that's portable. You can use it on either a phone or a tablet and complete our workflows, even if you go offline for a period of time. And then whenever you get back to the office or online, that can just be automatically uploaded to Arches. This has happened before. So I don't know if anyone has used Arches Collector, but it did exist. It seemed to be quite popular for a time. It let people add or edit resources. It had offline maps. It was like had two-way synchronization with Arches implementations. It did everything that we need plus more, and it's open source, which is great. But then the problem with that is that it has stopped working. So Arches Collector stopped being maintained 2 years ago. Basically, whenever Arches upgraded to Arches 7, some of the changes to the information architecture wasn't working for Android devices with their implementation of Arches Collector. And then there was some issues with some of the softwares that they used for synchronization, namely CouchDB and PouchDB. And it just, I think they got too many problems at once, and they didn't really have a lot of resources to put towards it. So they decided that they were no longer going to be able to maintain it. So they sort of abandoned it. I think some people are still using it, if they're on Arches 6. But we're on Arches 7, so we need a solution for that. So this led to me thinking, what do we actually need to do? Because we don't need something quite as sophisticated as Arches Collector was. So whenever we break it down for what we need to complete workflows, is we're going to need a way to receive cards from Arches, a way to send tiles back to Arches, a way to imitate the workflows that we already have, and then some online functionality such as being able to save resources, graphs, workflows to your device, the ability to save maps for offline in case you need to do some polygons or drawing or whatever on site. So you definitely have access to that, even if it's there's no access. We probably don't need to worry about some of the problems that Arches Collector ran into with synchronization. Ours, if we're just completing workflows and sending them off, it probably doesn't need two-way synchronization. We can probably just store what we have and then send that whenever we get back without too much worry. And hopefully we don't really need to worry too much about the information architecture either. Just kind of fire the data, take the data from the cards endpoint, send the data to the tiles endpoint, and hopefully keep this very simple. So our goal was to create a simple progressive web application using a design strategy that allows developers to introduce advanced or custom features with relative ease. So basically make something very, very basic, but write it in a way that if you do need to customize it or add something to it, that it should be relatively plug and play for things that your developers do. So that's the goal. That's what we're hoping to get from the end of this. And then, so where are we now? So back whenever I did this in LA, we weren't really anywhere at all. I was just kind of showing proof of concept really that it could be done in a simple way. I'm a lot more further along here, so I have a short video. This is taken from my phone. So I start here by just going to the site. It's just a development site at the moment. You could imagine this being one of these Arches applications, one of these standalone applications that are written with Vue, which you access from the plugins page. I'm not sure how many people have worked with the standalone Arches applications, but you can imagine just having this connected to your instance and connecting to it from there. I log in here online. I didn't have to do that, but I did. So with me while I type. This would theoretically allow you to join multiple Arches instances if you needed to, but more work would need to be done on how you actually manage that and show which one you're on. But okay, so whenever we're on this page, because it is a PWA, we're able to download it straight from the browser. So you can see that I go to that install app section there, and that will install it on my device. And you can use that as any mobile app or tablet app or even desktop app if you want to do it on your computer, standalone. Once that has installed, it'll appear. And then we can click in from there. And you'll see it looks exactly as it did in the web page, but with the advantage being if we are offline, we can still open this page to safety our device. So yeah, as I said, quite simple, not a lot of options there. One thing that was brought up again and again in LA and triggered a lot of discussion was how we were going to approach the offline maps. So there were a few people who had encountered this problem and had different solutions. The most common was to use one of these Esri products and use ArcGIS. We didn't really want to do that. Wanted to keep it more simple, so I have a solution here which just uses Leaflet. And basically, if you've ever used OpenStreetMaps and spent some time looking at the URLs, you'll see that they've got a very logical way of organizing their URL. So it basically says what zoom level you're on, and then basically a grid for where that square appears at that zoom level. So you can just kind of pick the numbers, and then because every zoom level quadruples the amount of tiles, you can figure out where you are quite handily. So what we're doing here is whenever we hit that save icon, it'll look at all the tiles that are on your screen, and then all of the tiles at a more zoomed out level that you would need to contain that within. And whenever it gets it, then it stores it to your device using IndexedDB. So the next time, whenever you're on the maps, if it can't access OpenStreetMaps online, it'll check your device history or your device memory to see if it's in there. So I show a short example of this. So I zoom in and I hit that save button. It's then 4,000, nearly 5,000 tiles. So I figured that's too much for demonstration purposes. So I zoomed in a little bit further. Now that we've zoomed in, it's only 107 tiles. And then I show that area. So the bit that's in the light blue layer, it still hasn't saved. So the big square is at zoom level 8. The one in the top right is then zoom level 9. The one down the bottom left of that one at the top right is zoom level 10, and so on and so forth, all the way up to zoom level 18. And then the area with the dense collection of the small squares is the actual area that we were zoomed in on the phone whenever we hit save. So I show what that looks like just going offline as normal on the phone. So just go in the airplane mode. And then, so you'll see that these blue areas never fill in because we haven't saved them and because we don't have access to online. Now you will see, then it just showed demonstrating it like this, that there are tiles that are outside of our blue area. That is just because our device cached them automatically. But whenever we zoom in, you'll see more of those start to disappear. But areas that are in that blue space will not, because we've manually sort of explicitly stored that to our device. That was just me taking the filter off. You don't need that blue grid on. It's just a show. It's just to highlight where you've actually got saved. And then I snap over here to my desktop app just to show what it's like if I've completely removed the cache. So the only tiles that will appear are ones that we've stored in this way. So you'll see that the entire area at the moment is blank because we're at a zoom level that we haven't saved. I think we're at zoom level 7 or something like that. And then that little blue area in the middle there is the area that we've actually got saved. So if we zoom in, now we're at zoom level 8 there that we just went past, and then zoom level 9, and zoom level 10, so on and so forth. And then hopefully I show it without the offline filter. And it's good doing it like this as well, because if you can draw your polygons on leaflet, that behavior all stays exactly the same. It's just how you get the tiles that is changed. So that's that. So now we'll go back to our application and go back online. I'm just going to show off a few of the workflows, and then that'll be me. So I don't know if I'm under, over, or just on time, but so we've went here, and because we're online, this has taken a list of workflows that are from our Arches implementation. You'll see there's an option to either save or open it. So I've selected the archive catalog here, and then I hit save. I don't have a loading spinner right now, so I just wait for a little minute and then I'll open it. So this is opening it from online. Please do ignore the very ugly breadcrumb. That's not going to stay around. It's just one way to navigate through the steps. It's just pretty quick to do. Then I can show us going through these steps. Don't type in all these. People need to know. Just fill in the show through there. Going to be date widget. But now, because I have saved this workflow, I'll show going offline and returning to the workflow page. So back on the airplane mode. And I use the breadcrumb just to get the workflows there. And you'll see that the only workflow available is archive catalog, because that's the one that would save to our device. And if I open it though, it looks exactly the same and it behaves exactly the same. So that allows us to use a workflow even if it's offline, and save our progress, and then send it to our Arches implementation whenever we're back online, essentially. And that's it for there, but I do have just a little bit extra just to show off some of the other widgets. So this is me on Firefox, which I use a dark theme for, so you can see that the styling's changed automatically. So if you did have a custom theme you wanted to do, it shouldn't be too difficult to implement it. But I have a resource select. And a concept select and the map. I draw a little line here just to illustrate. Obviously, we should make better controls for leaflet, but we'll get to that. And I file select. I actually didn't show the concept select, it was there, it does work. And it went online anyway. And the date widget. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. Other things I need to add is that little storage tab currently doesn't do anything, but I would like to be able to, show accurately what people already have stored to their device. Work on it, but yeah, it's a good start so far. In addition to having it as a PWA, we also can build it as a Android app or an application for iOS. So it's possible we'd be able to offer that if we ever come up with features that people need that can't be done on a pure PWA. But yeah, I'm going to close my presentation so I can see you all again. I'll stop sharing. And does anyone have any questions? Not seeing anything? It's the mark of a good presentation. Every question answered.
No, I thought it was really good, Owen. It's something that, again, I think we would be interested in the future. We don't use the collector or haven't used the collector app currently, but I can see it with us going to try and engage with our local authority colleagues with their local list, and when they do surveys or refresh them and they get volunteers or other officers out doing them, this would be a good way of people being able to go out in the street and record information very quickly. So yeah, I think it's really good. Thank you very much for your presentation.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Sorry, this just really high level thought, very abstract. As a feature that would be useful out in the field for these kind of it would require some level of being online, so maybe not one for the offline mode. But do you reckon it might be possible to use the phone, a mobile device's GPS to get a basic point reference and create a geometry?
Yeah. You can actually do that offline as well, I learned.
You can do that offline as well?
Yeah. So Esri has a thing called field maps at the moment, which you can do that. So you can actually draw polygons by walking and tracing an area, and it'll do it, which is very slick. And it works offline. So it definitely is possible to do, but I haven't actually looked into doing it.
Yeah, if that could be integrated with having that workflow available out in the field, that would be amazing, because you wouldn't even have to fart about drawing with your finger on a screen. That'd be great.
Yeah, they know where you are, even if you're not online. It's the modern world.
Cheers.
No, super. Thanks for that, Matt. Right, if there, if you think of anything, we can come back if there's time for questions at the end, or I'm sure, as I said, our presenters will be very happy to discuss this offline. So this actually isn't a presentation that was given at, I'm far aware, at the developers meeting, but Samuel was there, and he's going to give us an update on the work that he's been doing with the QGIS Arches app, which he gave us one last time. So he's going to tell us about the progress that he's been doing. So over to you, Samuel.
Yeah, no worries. I did actually do a presentation in LA, so this is going to be a lot of the slides from there. No, that's fine. So it's going to be a lot of the slides from there, but I have removed some of the technical stuff, and some developments have happened since then, so I've stuck them in as well. But I'm also going to turn my camera off because I don't know how reliable my internet's going to be. My name's Samuel. I'm a software developer for Knowledge Integration. We're a provider for Arches. We've been in the Arches scene for quite a while. And today I'm going to talk to you about the QGIS plugin that I've been developing since late last year. Like Stuart said, I did a presentation at the last user group, but the plugin wasn't. It was still quite shabby. Not to say that it isn't still now, but it's definitely progressed quite a bit since then. So these are the slides that I did in LA, but with some stuff added, some stuff taken away. So I'm going to get rid of that actually. A very brief bit of background. I'll be preaching to the choir here. Everyone's already going to know this, but I've just left these in anyway for the 3 people that don't know what QGIS is. So QGIS is a GIS. It's a software where people can edit, add spatial data, visualize it. They can add polygons, lines, also raster layers, and it supports all the industry standards and that stuff. Its key selling point is that it's free and open source, and it's probably one of the major competitors of Esri and the ArchesORM software, although there probably are other GISs around, but I only really know of the 2. So it probably lacks a bit of a few of the features of ArchesORM. Obviously, ArcGIS is a proprietary software, so it's going to have more funding. QGIS being open source, yeah, that sort of thing. So the UI can be complicated, apparently, as some online say. But this, again, if you're used to QGIS, you probably don't think it's complicated. But the good thing about QGIS is it's flexible and customizable, because you can have official and community plugins to just in QGIS itself. You can go and click on the plugins tab and download them all. So that's good. I think there's the same in Arc Pro, but I don't know if it's as nice as you can click on a drop down, all that sort of stuff. So the inspiration for this plugin came about because there is an integration link between Arc Pro and Arches that was developed by Historic England and Farallon. This allows you to use ArcGIS and its geometry layers. You can connect to an Arches project and you can create new Arches resources, or you can use the spatial views feature to get your Arches resources into Arc Pro and then edit them using the plugin, which is very nice. So there's been this demand for a QGIS version from the community for a long time, and around last year, that's when I decided to start looking into it. So why they both make sense, like I said, both QGIS and Arches are both free and open source. They both share the same license. You can go on GitHub and find the code base from them both and clone it and start doing what you like. They're both written in Python, which again is nice for Arches developers. You can, well, for me, it was nice to be able to just delve into it and be in the same language, unlike the Arc Pro one, which I think is .NET framework. And also because they're both open source, they're both community driven. So you can, like I say, you can go on the GitHub page, you can request features, bug reports, and do what you like with it. And why would one want to use a GIS is a good question, I reckon. Arches contains everything you need for entering spatial data. You can draw polygons on the map, you can visualize them on the map, you can even connect stuff like GeoServer to pull in raster files. So why would you need a GIS? Well, many organizations already use them. They like to separate the workflows and the work. For instance, I don't know, there may be specific roles where they don't want to touch Arches, but they want to be able to create the polygons, the geometry data in ArcPro or QGIS, and then upload it to Arches and say someone else can fill the rest of the data. Maybe they only do the geometry side of it. So that's important. And having a plugin is a really good thing for the community because it allows everyone to be able to use Arches and not ditch their current workflows or their current software. And that's really a good thing. And then there's also a potential use for offline. I know Owen's presentation was really good, and the future of the offline app is something that we're really interested in. But something I learned in LA, I think it was Cyrus mentioned that you can have this QGIS app. You can draw your polygons in there, and then you can sync them to a QGIS project, I think, and then they'll end up on your desktop project. And then I guess from there you could upload to Arches. But again, that's probably a different user who would want to do that. I don't know how many people are in the field doing polygons on QGIS, but there's still it's still there to be used. So I didn't really go into this in my previous UK user group presentation about the design. So I just thought I'd throw in a little bit here for the developers who are a bit interested. So the QGIS UI uses something called the PyQt framework, which is a Python binding for Qt, which is basically a C++ UI toolkit where you can drag in buttons and widgets, and you can play around with how you want it to look, make it all aligned, and then in Python you then link up your button presses to what they do. This button activates this function. So that's what I've been using to design this plugin's UI, an app called Qt Creator, and this is a picture of it on the right. You add in your spaces, you add in all the buttons you want. It's quite fun to have to play around with, although it can be quite fiddly and annoying, but overall it's good. So the design considerations were obviously look at the plugin that already exists, that being the ArcPro one. ArcGIS has this top panel where you can navigate the tabs a bit like Office. So the ArcGIS plugin for ArcGIS Pro uses this. You've got buttons for connecting to Arches, for editing, etc. So originally I thought, well, this is the way to go. But I realized that QGIS doesn't really do that. It's a lot more dialogue based, and a lot of so for instance, this image here is just adding a new shapefile, and it's a dialogue rather than that side panel. And I realized a lot of the plugins were also that. So I thought maybe going with a dialogue based user interface would probably be better to keep with the QGIS feel. So I looked at various plugins, and here are three that I was mostly interested in. There were just three random ones that I was researching, and they're all dialogue based again, but these first two contain a lot of different functionality that they've separated into different views or different dialogues. But that third one is tab based, and that one really stuck with me because it seemed like it could be a one-stop shop for everything the plugin could have to offer. Users wouldn't get lost. They wouldn't be like, oh, I need to be in this different dialogue. I've got loads of them open, whatever. So this is the sort of thing I went with, a one-stop shop of your connection on one tab, and then once you've done that, you can go into the next, that sort of thing. The other tabs wouldn't be usable until you've logged in. And I went along with that. So this is how the UI looked before. It's probably how it looked in the last UK user group. So you've got tabs for your Arches connection, creating resources, editing, and the settings. And I thought it looks good. It looks very QGIS. But a couple of weeks before the developer meetings in LA, I wanted to have a play around with the style sheets in Qt. So the style sheets are they're not CSS, they're called QSS, which is the Qt version. So you can bind different styles to the buttons and that sort of stuff. And I wanted to have a play around with this to see if I could give it a bit of an Arches feel, so that maybe people who are used to Arches and want to go into QGIS, they'd be, I don't know, they'd feel a sense of similarity. So as I say here, the style sheet work's still quite in progress, it's still a bit shabby, but this is how it ended up looking before or during the meeting in LA. So you can see we've got the buttons there with the colors that represent the Arches ones. The buttons also have some icons that they do in Arches, and the fonts and everything's the same. But after LA, I decided to, in this presentation that I did in LA, I mentioned that I wanted to get rid of that top bar because, well, currently in this GIF, it's got no styling. I thought replacing it with like the Arches nav bar on the side would really show that Arches feeling. So this is what it does look like now with that nav bar. It's still maybe a bit shabby, you know, there's some lines everywhere that I need to iron out, but you know, it's still an in development piece of work. So we've got the same tabs as before, they're just vertical, and instead of the words, they've got icons, the same icons you'd see in Arches for connecting, editing, creating, and then the settings one. So I've got videos of demonstrations rather than a live one, unfortunately. They're all quite short, but they're just to show the different bits of functionality. So to start off, there's logging into the plugin. Now I will say, to start off, these are the videos from the previous presentation I did on this. So the functionality is the same, but that vertical nav bar isn't in this because I didn't have the time to re-record. And as I'll say later, I've since broken my development environment because of some of the new stuff. But yeah, so you can either go in the plugins tab to search for Arches, or you can click on that side, that being there. And we've got the Arches connection, the tabs that I showed before. So here we're logging into just a local environment, but anyone can do this in the future with their Arches projects URLs. We put in our username and password, and now we've got access to all these tabs, apart from the edit resource one, because we've not actually selected any resources themselves. Oh, not again. So creating the resource, we've gone ahead and logged on. The create resource tab is now active, so we can select one of the resource models we want to create it in, and then we can select the feature to upload from these layers on the side. And once we hit create resource, this dialog pops up, just basically saying, are you sure you want to create it? You've submitted one polygon. And once you hit create, we've got a dialog box for now that just shows you where your resource has been created. So if we navigate along to that, we'll see we've created this new resource in the QGIS test model, and it's the exact same polygon as it was in QGIS. Pretty simple stuff. It just uses the Arches API to create a new resource and push that geometry up. So with the editing resources, you can connect via a spatial view to get all your points from a certain model on. And then when you click on these resources, the plugin will know what you've selected. It'll generate a small table here to show some of the feature information that you've created your spatial view with. So it'll say the name and other node ID stuff. And then once you've clicked it, you've got the option to add a geometry or replace the geometry. So in this example, we're just going to add one. Again, we're doing the polygon test. So this example is a pub in York. At the moment, it's just got a point. But if we refresh it, then we've now added our new polygon from QGIS to the point. So our GeoJSON has just been populated with the new polygon. So pretty simple stuff. We can do the same by replacing it. So as you've probably guessed, we'll select the polygon again, but instead of adding it, we'll replace the geometry. So that point will be gone. Essentially, that'll just remove the current GeoJSON and create a new one with our new geometry. I guess the example in a real life would be maybe someone's inputted like a preliminary polygon. It's a little bit wrong, but they just wanted the resource in there to start with. You could do it through QGIS. You can just select that geometry and replace it. And because it's a spatial view, it would be replaced in QGIS after that, which is always nice. User permissions, they're also reflected in the plugin. So here I'll log into my local environment again, but as someone who's only got access to editing the graph and they don't have access to editing any resources, as soon as they hit connect, it'll say you can't log in, and navigating to the create resource and edit resource tabs will be, everything will be grayed out. You won't be able to use the plugin with that user. Same with if you lack specific node permissions, or node edit permissions, you can log into that user, try and add or try and create that polygon, but it'll say you can't create data for these because you don't have access to creating it. So that stuff's quite nice. And then I believe the final one, which was feedback from the previous user group, that I think I asked whether a model would ever have 2 geometry nodes, and the function for being able to add multiple geometries to different nodes is something that the plugin needed to be able to do. So that's something that it can now do. So in this example, we've got geometry node 1 and geometry node 2. As soon as we select that model in the QGIS plugin, it knows that there's multiple. So it's dynamic. It'll allow you to select which node and which feature you want, and then you can create it to one. There's obviously some flaws with this that I do mention later on, but you can only add one of the geometries to one of the nodes. It would be really cool to be able to add to both of them. And something else later on as well, being able to add lists of geometries. So currently we can only add one from the list. It would be nice to be able to add, just select as many as you want, or select from a drop down. But obviously still in development. That's something that is planned for later on. And then the final one is very niche. We can just navigate to the oh, sorry, I forgot what I was meant to be demonstrating. So the settings has something called hide PSQL layers. So this is for hiding your spatial view, because when you're creating a resource, you don't want to be adding all the geometries from the spatial view to one resource. That probably wouldn't be great, especially in this example, we've got about 50,000 points. I don't think one resource should ever have 50,000 points, but you know, so that's turned off by, or turned on, sorry, by default to hide those layers. And then we've also got enable logging, which is a new feature. So you can turn that on and it'll open a new tab. And if things go wrong, it should say that there. But again, that's a new feature, something to be looked at in the future. And speaking of the future, so currently this plugin is still very much in development. We want some more features in there. It's got more requirements before it can go further. It's selected as an experimental plugin, so it's not in the QGIS plugin repo. However, we would like to get it in the QGIS experimental plugins repo, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But yes, for now, you have to manually install it by cloning it from GitHub, or you can go on GitHub and export it as a zip and then just import that into QGIS. That works too. And of course, it's not fit for use in production implementations yet, but obviously that's the end goal. But some developments since the developer meetings in LA, it now lives in the Arches project organization, which is very cool. So anyone can go ahead and click on that link and see what the code looks like. There's currently 2 branches. There's the master one, which I use to push all the code from my local branch onto, from my local repo when I was first making the plugin. And now we've got a dev 0.0.x branch, which is where we're going to be doing all the PRs too and that stuff. So we plan for a stable 0.1.0 release very soon, that being the first stable release of the experimental status. And that's what I want to get on the experimental plugins repository. And I'm very keen on getting this onto the experimental plugins repo, because that will mean that anyone who's, whether they're not interested in the development side of it, but they want to test it out on their local system or something, they'll then be able to go on that repo, download it, and this is through QGIS, so they'll be able to hit the plugins tab, download the plugin, and then begin testing. And if they do find bugs, they can stick it on the GitHub issues log. And for this release, because I'm keen on getting it as soon as possible, I'm only requiring the following 2 features. The first one, which I'm working on, which is a major code restructure / refactor. That's because when I started it, it was obviously very basic, but as it grew, every function just got added to the same Python file, which is now about 1,000 lines long, which isn't ideal. So that needs to be split off into constituent parts. And then the second one is just being able to have refresh tokens in, which has been on my list of to do from the start, but other things got in the way. So this is so that if you then use your access token, and I think it's if you use it for over the time, it should generate you a refresh token. So that's something to look into. And here's the issues, just a screenshot of the issues log as it exists. They're all things that need to be in this stable release and also the future. But this is where I'd love for people to be able to just say, oh, we want this feature in, or I found this bug whilst testing. So further improvements to the UI will be improving those style sheets to make them less shabby and more nicer, adding more text, replacing those text box messages with more pop-ups to say you're not able to log in because you don't have the permissions, rather than having it in that text box. That'd be a lot nicer. And then I don't know if you saw, but there is currently a logged in tab that replaces the login tab. So once you have logged in, it says who you are and what your Arches URL is. That's really basic at the moment, but it would be nice to be able to style that out a bit. You know, make it have a link to your Arches project. Maybe have links to documentation and the forum, that sort of stuff. That'd be nice. Where one other thing that I'm keen on, but I don't know if it's even possible, is to visualize the geometry that you want to submit rather than just having a text. So currently it says you want to submit 1 polygon, go. It would be cool to say, this is the polygon that you want to submit. Is this correct? That sort of thing. It would be a really cool feature, but again, I don't know if it's actually possible. It should be possible, but yeah. And then these are all, well, not all, but a lot of the functional improvements that I want to get in. Some of the, token expiry, refresh token, and refactor are on there, but some of the other stuff is to do with multi-polygon / multi-points. These things shouldn't exist in Arches, so we need to perfect the geometry conversion. Make it able to support multiple versions of Arches. This should be possible, but I guess that depends on whether the API changes. One thing I've got in mind is when you log in, it should be able to detect what version of Arches you are on, and therefore it should reflect whether the code needs to change. allowing multiple layers to be selected when you're editing and creating is something that I'd like to add in. Same way that these are some other ones to do with other node population. So it would be cool to add a legacy ID. So you can say it's on an old database. You might be able to say, well, this was old database ID 52. I want to be able to track that in Arches. Being able to submit other data when you're creating it, again, similar to the above. If you could say, I want to populate the name node because I'm creating this geometry, it's the land on this field, then you'd want to populate that in Arches and be able to find it after, rather than it just being an undefined. So yeah, those are some of the things. And being able to bulk create geometries would be nice too. And then the final thing is we just since the developer meetings, we've decided to sort of work in parallel with the ArcGIS Pro plugin, so that no plugin will be less feature rich. They'll both have the same amount of features, and this is just to ensure that, like I say, one's not better than the other. It's not gonna, people aren't gonna be complaining like, oh, the QGIS one has got this feature, why doesn't ours? You know, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's my presentation. I hope I haven't gone on for too long. I know we're a bit short on time, so I try to speed through it. But these are that's GitHub and my contact. And like I say, you can find the plugin now on the official QGIS, on the official Arches project repository. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free.
Well, thank you, Sam. Oh, that's really, really interesting. Good work you've been doing there. Yes, I see Matt's got a question. Matt?
Hi, yeah, cheers. Really great presentation. I've actually got sort of one question and one just sort of little comment. Question being, I'm sure it is absolutely possible, and I'm pretty sure it's already possible in the Arc Pro one. I just want to double check because it wasn't visible in the presentation. The test when you were doing the upload of the polygon geometry, it looked like that polygon test layer just had one polygon in it. Just wanted to double check that if you had a feature layer that had multiple geometries in it, if you just selected one feature from that feature layer in the GIS and then uploaded that, it would only upload the selected geometry.
That's a good point. I feel like it would upload everything in the layer at the moment, but so it should only
So you basically need to ensure that the layer only ever has one geometry in it.
Well, if you have a layer which has multiple and you want to upload all of them, then that works.
Yeah.
That can do it. But were you saying if you've got
a layer with multiple geometries in it from which you want to upload one geometry to one feature?
That's a good point.
Record.
It can't do.
I mean, obviously you can just extract it into a separate layer easily enough, and that solves the problem. It's just
that would be cool in the future. That's something.
Yes, for it to recognise the GIS actually carrying out a selection.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
then use that to populate. Cool. That was the question. Just in terms of the little thing about the presentation, obviously you had the slide of like the use case for why you'd need the GIS as well as Arches. I think the main two things from our perspective, and I think they are more widely applicable than just the heritage sector, is being able to having somewhere where people can record their spatial data natively in a fixed projection. So SGB 36 for our records, but for in other countries, whatever your local projection is, obviously quite a lot of people in the HER community are quite kind of, that would be like one of the first things they'd say is like, we want to make sure we have a fixed data set that is natively recorded in OSGB 36, and then we have the GIS as our like primary repository of the geospatial data that we know is OSGB 36, and that essentially the Arches is just like a web-based front end, and therefore it doesn't matter if it shifts by like however many centimeters a decade. And then the other one is georectification. So like being able to map features from underlying historic mappings, which you might not have the sort of copyright or whatever to just plonk as a base map into your Arches instance. So that like just for if you ever like giving that presentation to certainly within the heritage industry, but I think as I say more widely applicable, you might want to add those 2 points to the kind of use case slide. Just a thought.
That's great. Thank you very much for that.
Cheers.
Yeah, I certainly agree, because obviously there are limitations to what you can actually have mapping wise or layer wise within Arches before it starts getting really very complicated. So yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff that we keep on our GIS, which the advisors and even ourselves, the HER team, use and just flip in and out. So yeah, that's another reason for using the GIS. I have to say, and this is an aspiration, and I think it's a good point that you're making about trying to keep Pro and QGIS kind of level pegging. But one of the things that I would like to be able to do is, if you're doing a search in Arches, it's difficult to visualize lots of records. So if you want to say, show me all the Roman bathhouses or timber frame buildings in London, it's difficult to actually visualize that on a whole map. The ability to take those records and press a button and then they're all shown up in a GIS, I think would be fantastic, and possibly vice versa. But I don't expect you to do it this month. But I think that will be something that users would also be interested. But I know that there are complications with that, doing it in QGIS, and especially doing it with Pro. But just a thought.
No, you say that. Recently, I have been I've been thinking about using the Arches GeoJSON endpoint and being able to. I don't know if it's possible because I've not properly looked into it. It's just concept, but being able to say, I want this resource or I want these resources, and then it just pulls them in, rather than being able to use, rather than having to use the spatial views. I think that would be quite cool as well.
Nice, super. Any other questions?
Yes,
yes.
Thank you. I have a question. Thank you for the amazing work. It's quite useful. So I have a question about Arches and QGIS, but not directly related to the plugin, but also about the GeoJSON URL that you have just mentioned. So when you want to export in one of the formats that you can export results from Arches is that GeoJSON URL. It just creates a URL, and then you can go in QGIS from the vector, use HTTPS protocol to add the GeoJSON. And it's also live, like if you make any changes in Arches, it would update in QGIS as well. So what I've noticed is that it's if there is a resource model that is open for guest users, the GeoJSON URL works. But if I change the permissions for the same resource model to some specific user, it stops working and it starts giving an error that says protocol source type has failed. Do you want to try another source type? And I have tried authentication, basic authentication, username and password, but it still doesn't work. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts or anyone has encountered that scenario.
I can't say I've encountered it, but when I do end up looking into it, which I hope is soon, I'll definitely feedback if I can find a solution, or if it's a core Arches bug, then we can definitely contribute that back.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That would be quite useful. Thanks.
Right. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to Phil. We are kind of running out of time a bit, so what I might do is Chantel's very kindly agreed, and she won't get too upset about this, maybe holding her presentation on AI functionality until our next meeting, which raises if anybody's has a burning desire to give a presentation, please let me or Jana know, and you'll be on the list for the next presentation. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll just move on to Phil, and then that'll give us time for further questions afterwards.
Yeah, Stu, if I could just basically, the presentation I was going to give is the same that's on the recorded video. So as long as that I'm on that video, you'll get all the info.
Yes, you are on there. I did notice that. Sorry, I didn't see you, Samuel, on that. I did try and flick through very quickly doing the school run, and I didn't see you. So apologies.
I was the only one on day 3.
Oh,
why.
I see. That's
So it's not
we
up
should
there
have a
yet.
special one for Samuel's presentations. So I'll have a word with Dennis about that. And Alison. Anyway, without further ado, over to you, Phil.
Great, thank you very much, Stuart, and thanks, Chantal, as well. Much appreciated. Okay, I'm going to screen share here. And hopefully I get the right screen. Yep, that's visible. Great. Not that I was slightly cynical, but as Linux and Teams always experience. But okay, so I mean, first of all, just to give a bit of background, I also was in LA, and I have to say it was echo what others have said. It was a hugely worthwhile experience. I was, I think, really productive, and I think from our perspective, we'd brought myself, Taylor, Owen, and Jana over, and I think everyone's agreed that that was a benefit for all the work that we're doing in general. And again, just a bit of appreciation to John Murphy for also coming over from GD and Northern Ireland Civil Service for allowing that to happen. So I think that was really helpful. I have to confess, apologies, Stuart, I was a bit slow in getting back to you to actually tell you what I talked about. So I have included some Kubernetes, but also ArchesORM and GraphQL update, which is kind of the bit of the thrust, and also some of the outcomes from LA. So I don't know, not 100% sure why I called it Square Arches, but I did. So one of the things that I realized that biggest pain point with Arches for us was the learning curve, and especially quite a few of our team in general have come from development backgrounds rather than cultural heritage backgrounds, and also it's trying to get familiar with how those things are mapping into Django. So why does that matter? Because we want to be able to capture all the logic, particularly the logic that we're working through with HED, some of the what we call business rules of who should be able to see what, how we allow, let's say, an excavation, in what circumstances can that excavation license proceed, etc. Being able to code that in a way that's quite transparent, and we're not having lots of UUIDs around the place. And it makes it much more maintainable. It helps people get up to speed. I know, I think Taylor and Owen will agree that they've come in before quite a bit of this, and it's been quite a huge learning curve. Also, just to shout out as well, Taylor, thanks very much for the presentation. I'd also just note, I don't think you mentioned this, but the workflow builder was entirely Taylor's own initiative, and created off his own bat. So, like, fantastic work, Taylor. Thank you. We found it really helpful. I think as well as Stuart, who's online, can probably agree with me that he's come in more recently and has had to do less with some of the manual mapping of nodes. So apologies, it's going to be a little bit technical, but I'm going to try and keep it as high level as possible. But essentially what we've tried to do is lower the bar for technical entry. Some of that's been around standardizing some of the web stuff. I'll briefly talk about ArchesORM. Some has been around the IT administration. I'll talk a little bit about the permissions, and I know I've got some people to get back to around some of the permissions discussion. I don't know if anyone's interested, but if you want to follow, there is a PR for our initial implementation of permissions framework to core, which we're hoping will make 7.6. And on the data side, particularly for our data scientists, trying to make things a little bit more accessible with GraphQL API that's auto-generated from your models. And finally, the infrastructure, as alluded to, we've been working quite a bit heavily on trying to standardize this for getting new Arches instances up really quickly onto Kubernetes. And of course, thanks to HED and our other Arches clients, Tools of Knowledge, for example, I really appreciate them giving us freedom to do this work. So For ArchesORM, say trying to maintain business logic in a sustainable way, easy to version way, easy to describe way. And that's essentially when you're writing project code into Arches. If anybody's done bits of web dev in the past, you might have come across Link in C# or Fluent for PHP or SQL Alchemy in Python. And apologies for the very wordy slide. What have we done? Well, we basically made it so that you can say, here are the resource models that I want to be able to do simple things with as if they were Python objects. And then when Arches starts, then all of your Python code is able to see those as just Python classes. So monument class, for example, in ArchesHER. And we've tried to use that as an opportunity to create some optimizations around how things are seen and viewed. So for example, that you can view translatable strings as strings. So you can treat them like you would normally programming, send them back and forth, but you can also say you want to re-render them into a different language if that language has been stored in Arches. So this is the kind of thing that we have. So I can say, okay, I want to use the Arches Django base for this. And I happen to have an ArchesHER model called person. And this is able to inspect it and say, okay, well, person actually has a names node group. And each of those names node group, and that names node group has in it a full name node. And I can add one or more of those node groups. Sorry, one or more tiles to that for each name. And this would be the equivalent of going through the front end and typing, sync lambda or column war and adding those manually. Then, of course, we can search for that. We can do that in Postgres, search for something like a person's name. So we want all the Columbas in our system. Or we can do, just like we do through the front end search, we can do a text search across all the fields and say we want to search for more, and that will get us all of our place names, etc., all of the indexed fields. We'll come back. And more complicated constructs too. So here's addresses where we've got multiple nodes. We can add that new address model to, that new address resource to some person that already exists under their addresses node group. So we can have those relationships work reasonably intuitively, as in different objects representing different resources. So not going to go too much into very technical details, so I'm going to leave that slide for those who have special interest in it. And I will note that one thing I've not picked up on, and again, this is another benefit of being in LA, some of the things that we maybe miss going through the code base. And the Farallon folks have done some fantastic work on views that are surfacing, and that's ongoing as well, on views that are surfacing these structures already boiled down into properties of a single row, rather than having lots of tiles. For those who know familiar with the data structure, lots of tiles that are related to the node groups, and then you kind of have to construct it again. So there are some of these things that you can do directly from Postgres, and some ways that might be more efficient. And we're looking to see if we can merge those two approaches. So that's really been very helpful discussion there. What kind of things, because I realize for some people it would be more interesting to see what you can do with this, what's this enable? Well, for example, you could use this to swap out the Arches Django system, but still have the same visualization logic, render it from JSON or something like that to do microsites or static sites. And we're hoping that this will enable maybe some of this logic in JS as well, so we can start doing JS with fewer node IDs and EU IDs around the place. Also, because we've made this so that we can swap things back and forward simultaneously, we can have different backends at the same time, that we can implement syncing. So we say we want to get the person from here and save it to here, which is potentially an interesting application. And as you can imagine, it gives us the potential for having quite succinct ways of writing quite complex logic. So the other thing this enables is the GraphQL APIs. I think you've seen me talk about this before, but now we've got this a lot more automated. and rewritten. The idea of this is that we start up an API endpoint, and it talks to the ArchesORM, which gives it the entire structure of all of the Arches resource models you want to make available. And we've even got a little Python client library so that you can, from Jupyter notebooks if you do data science, or from other platforms if you're writing APIs there, that you can talk to these GraphQL endpoints. And as soon as you've created your resource model, you already have an API automatically. And you can pull things down, you can push things up. And the work over the last couple of weeks since LA has been integrating the permission system to that as well, so that the only fields that are seen in the Python or in the API are the ones the currently logged in user has access to, and resources they have access to. Cool. So looking at exploring more complicated searches and bulk uploading is something we're using, but need to tighten it up. And how's that look? Well, if I can do this from my own computer and talk to a remote Arches instance at example.org, and if it's running the API, then I can connect. And I say, hey, I want to create a new person with full name Ash. That will create a new Arches resource model with full name Ash. I can also get a client, get a person by their resource ID, and it will come back with a proper structure that's simple, easy to use, and you don't need to think about all of the UIDs. So that's, yeah. Okay, what's that enable? Well, I suppose I should try to think if there's any limitations here that are particularly interesting. Authorization is now integrated. That's changed since LA. And I'm currently working on getting nested relationships. One of the nice things about GraphQL is it's easier to express questions like, I want all of the people who are related to a consultation that occurred within this physical area. So at the moment, trying to search for that can be kind of inefficient, but we're working on how to get that a bit sharper in GraphQL. It says it ignores cards, but we do now have an implementation that you can remap fields. So you can go and say, rather than have to go down into names and full name, well, actually, I just want that right at the top. So my person.full name represents the sticky nested node. Okay. Opportunities, syncing, again, being able to talk over APIs, mobile apps. So I think that's something Owen and I have been talking about. And also data science, so being able to pull back complex queries and automate things on those, even without having, just by having credentials to the Arches instance, without actually having to have access to the backend. Okay, and then I did say, apologies, again, this is even worse, but for those who really, really like infrastructure in terminal text. So this is, I'm currently building, so I'm hoping it's deploying correctly. But this is the process that we've got it down to so far, and we want to get this point and click, but for creating a new Arches instance that runs in continuous integration and deploys automatically to a public URL. And what I've done here is used our container toolkit, which we are, this is one line command to install it. We're keen to, but have not yet got alignment across the different Arches Docker approaches. But LA was fantastic for giving particularly Aaron and Andy and who else? Eric and I think have all been working on approaches, so an opportunity to align. Apologies if I forgot anyone. That gives us some makefile commands where we can create a new Arches project, 7.5 at the moment by default. We say we want to GitHub action, and this basically sets up a repo, a project folder. This is setting up a project incidentally, so this will sit on top of an Arches implementation. We're not building it straight in. This is your own managed project repo. Flux is the tool we use for automating deployments. So we assume that we've got a Kubernetes cluster running somewhere and that we want to deploy an extra Arches instance onto it. So we can add that to our Git managed description of what should be on our cluster. Add our new project to Git. And then update our infrastructure definitions that I mentioned, update that repository, and that should be it. And this will now deploy from GitHub straight into our infrastructure. So that's where we are with that, which is hopefully, even if the details not necessarily clear to people, you'll notice that that's a lot shorter than any other presentation I've given on Arches and Kubernetes. And finally, there is a working proposal for one of the things that we were discussing in LA is what people might want to do next year, and I've taken it to put something on the forums. I haven't quite got there yet, but there's general enthusiasm so far, unless anyone's got any major objections to trying to do 2025 in Belfast. I think one of the things that's really encouraging for us is that obviously HED are quite bought into Arches. Thanks, John. And you know, we've got ourselves all here, and we are currently looking at plans ahead. So I put this picture here. I swear it is from Northern Ireland. You can tell because it's really cloudy, which obviously we want people to come here for the weather and food, and particularly the fantastic Mexican cuisine that we have in Belfast. But unfortunately, if you missed LA, you might not get those in 2025. However, we do have a place called Hollywood, so in some ways it will be quite similar. So that's my presentation, and yeah, happy for some questions if you have time.
Thank you very much, Phil. Yeah, I think that's a really great idea for developers. Maybe something that we opened up a bit more for users as well to come along as well. That'd be great. Does anybody have any questions for Phil or any of our presenters? All excellent presentations that have answered everybody's questions that they could possibly think of about a wide varying degree of subjects, all to do with Arches, wonderful Arches. Well, if there aren't any further questions, I mean, obviously, please do have a look at the LA presentations. They'll probably give you a bit more in-depth information about the presentations that we've had today. I'd just like to thank again all our presenters for agreeing and giving such excellent and interesting presentations, and also for Chantel for being very generous and agreeing to duck out for this one, but be the first on for our next meeting in the year. Oh, John, please.
Before you go, I was going to ask one thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can, yes.
Yeah. No, it was just, it's not a question for anybody, but it's just maybe worth bearing in mind for an upcoming meeting. But I was at the developer meeting and there was an update from David Myers about the governance initiative, and the kind of the direction of travel of that seemed to be that there'd be a bit of give and take between the user groups and the governance board. So I have no idea how that's going to manifest itself, but it may be something that we might want to consider discussing at the next one or at future ones. I don't know if Mike or Gillian regularly come to the UK user group meeting, but I'm just mentioning it now because it would be worthwhile us considering it.
Yes, I think that's a good point, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, John, you just reminded me. I think we kind of talked a lot about what some of the topics that we've covered, but just to highlight, there were a number of other topics that were raised by the folks that aren't in this meeting that might be of interest to some of the people here. And I think governance initiative is obviously a particularly critical one. I think as well, there was some really interesting content from Galen on search, and I'm going to get in trouble if I forget something now, but search and geospatial, and some of the work particularly that the Parallel folks are doing on the moving towards Arches applications, and on Lingo, the wider project around future of RDM, is just to name a couple. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't had a look at the content in LA, it's not all technical, and there is some really interesting feature level discussion. So definitely check it out. Also, if you need recommendations for larger restaurants in LA, any of this can help.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil. Yes, John, I think yeah, that's a good point. I mean, how do we take on the group, and how do we take on ideas and develop those? Because obviously there will be various things that are common, and just an opportunity to throw out ideas about things that we may not have thought about before. So yes, that's a good thing. I think it might be be interesting at some point to maybe have a demonstration of the Northern Ireland system as well, because it'd be, I think, from my point of view and other HERs, it'd be interesting to see the similarities between us, the Arches for HER and what you're doing, and where there are differences, because that should create ideas about ways that we want to develop Arches for HER and vice versa. Right. If that's it, I'll just say thank you all to you very much for coming along, and as I say, hopefully Jana and I will send out some meeting requests in the next few weeks so that we can get something in the diary early on. And as I say, if anybody does have anything that they would like to present, or even if it's just a general discussion presentation, these are some ideas that we would like to take forward, please do let Jana and myself know, and we'll get them lined up for the next meeting.